Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Skye Waterson. How are you today, Skye?
Doing really great. Thank you.
Excellent. I am honored to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I can't wait for the listeners to learn more. And so just to share a little bit about you, Skye, you are the founder and owner of Unconventional Organization. And this is really to help entrepreneurs turn their ADHD into their greatest asset. And so just a little bit of background, this is a multi-six-figure business that you have created. And so bravo for that. I love it. And I love how we can take this, which is sometimes considered a challenge or a difficulty, and make it an asset. So again, welcome, Skye. Thank you for joining us. I always love to have my guests share how this journey happened for them. So would you tell us what led you down this path?
Yeah, for sure. So it's been an interesting journey. I sort of sit at the nexus of academic research, business strategy, and just my own experience of ADHD. So yeah, I am a former academic. That was what I was doing. And I got diagnosed at the beginning of my doctorate, which was a real surprise for me. I had no idea, but I knew there was something wrong. And so when I found out, that threw me into a lot of research into ADHD for myself, for other people. I started writing about it, teaching about it, because that's what I'd always done as an academic. And that really sparked the beginning of this business. At the time I was helping my boyfriend, now husband, with his business. And that knowledge of ADHD and passion about business kind of grew together. And now I help other business owners who want to have a stable life without the chaos, consistent income, and do it in a way that works for their brains.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. And it's always so fascinating to me to learn how people take something that could be, a drawback or something that really challenges them from succeeding and finding a way to make that work. And it sounds like you've really done that.
Just to be clear, I always like to say, so I got my master's, started my doctorate, and then several years into my doctorate, I ended up leaving to pursue this business full time. So started my doctorate.
I see. Okay. And no
thank you.
problem. Yeah. I mean, a master's degree still, that's, worth celebrating. And that you have this successful business grow from your experience, is tremendous. And I think that it's testament to what you kind of have figured out, that you can help others who may be struggling with the same kind of difficulty. So let's talk about, to start, what exactly is ADHD and how does it affect entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so ADHD is really common in entrepreneurs. There's a lot of research, to show that it's something that we tend to gravitate to if we have this kind of brain, because a lot of the strengths of ADHD, creative thinking, problem solving, are beneficial in this area. So the weaknesses are not. We'll talk about that. But in order, to figure out what it is, most people will want to go to a psychiatrist, and they have a set of criteria. Do you feel like you're driven by a motor? Do you feel like you struggle to sit still? Do you feel like you're getting distracted? And they will go through and particularly look for things that are persistent and pervasive. So is it across time? Is it across different categories of your life? Or is it just on Friday afternoons? That's kind of what they're looking for. Although I will say that a lot of, I do not require people to work with me to have a diagnosis, because a lot of people are on that journey. It's complicated, it's long, and people aren't always wanting to do it. So, wherever you are on that journey, I work with you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that it's important to recognize our lived experience, right? So yes, it would be beneficial potentially to go and meet with a psychiatrist to do testing and, like that. But I think a lot of people recognize things that may be happening in their life and go, perhaps this is this might
Yeah.
be meeting
Yeah.
that criteria. So thank you for that. And really, it's important that you you lead the journey that you need to lead, right? The life that you need to
Mhm.
live. So let's talk about how somebody who has that kind of ADHD brain, and I'm air quoting that, how can you build your business? Because I know there's strengths. You shared some strengths
Mhm.
with us, why entrepreneurs are
Mhm.
usually successful. So, how can we build a business with these and use them as the strengths?
Yeah. So usually what you'll find is that at the beginning, we have a bit of momentum. Once we pick what we're doing, and I talk to a lot of people who struggle with that part. But, we'll get going, we'll build some momentum. It's like, oh my gosh, this is working. Oh, I'm getting paid. This is amazing. And then what happens is you tend to hit the negatives of ADHD, the struggles of ADHD. So time blindness, working memory struggles, dopamine struggles, that kind of thing. And that's usually where people start to fall apart. And it can be really sad. It's one of the reasons I'm super passionate about what I do is I want you to have a stable, successful business. I want focused, balanced growth. That's what I teach. And so we don't want you to self-sabotage. We don't want you to, feel like you can't do it or burn out. Instead, what I teach, based on research and based on years and years of working with entrepreneurs and other professionals, is a series of 3 systems and 6 routines to help you go through focusing yourself, your business, your metrics, and then building the routines and habits to be able to do that. So, not a million tips. You don't have to remember 100 different things, and you can start to grow from there.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. And I think you're right. It's easy for us all to get overwhelmed. And when like you just said, it's not 100 things that you have to remember how to do. I think that's really helpful is,
Mm-hmm.
just the top things that are most important. And like you mentioned, time blindness, the dopamine, I think that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
We get excited about starting some new project and we can't give it up and we just, all in on it until then that point when we might hit and go like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do this
Yeah.
anymore. So let's talk about that for a minute. What are your suggestions or how do we begin to kind of look at if that's happening, what can we
Mm-hmm.
do about it?
Yeah. So, can you give me an example of what is happening in that circumstance?
Let's just say, I've got an idea for a business and I'm super excited about it. And I've done kind of preliminary work on it. I've created a
Mm,
website. I've begun to work on if it's a course or something I want to launch. I've started to do all of the background work for that, getting it
yeah.
prepared. But then I get to a
Yeah.
point where I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the one thing, like, I love this question because I was actually talking to a client about this question just today. You are an entrepreneur when you get paid. Okay.
Mhm.
So, first thing we want to understand is we want to know what your 80/20 is. Something I really, really focus on is prioritizing 80/20. The first thing we want to do is we want to focus you. So we want to understand what is the thing that is going to get you revenue. Because if you don't have revenue, then you better be, getting in some kind of fund because you don't have a business otherwise. So we want to figure out what is that minimum viable 80/20. We want to get there as close as fast as possible. And then from there, we'll get a little bit of dopamine, a little bit of momentum from there, and we can build that and we can grow on that.
Mm. What a great point. You're not really an entrepreneur if you're not getting paid. I mean, it's a great
Sorry to say.
title, but if you're not making an income from it, you're not really, a business owner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although,
Mm-hmm.
just when you're launching a business, sometimes there's expenses that come with beginning that. So it's not to
100%.
say
Yeah.
that you're not going to have
Yeah.
that, but until you're, are getting paid for this, maybe it's not
Mm-hmm.
really technically a business.
I've seen a lot of people sit on a lot of websites because they're not perfect and it can come and go. And the problem is that once you start, like I said, I just went and, ran a coaching meeting with my community today and we talked about this. So it's funny. But, you'll start and the market will tell you what it wants. And sometimes it's not what you thought it wanted. So highly, highly recommend you get out into the market as quickly as possible because you might find that what you're doing needs to be adjusted. Sometimes and this is why I love what I do because it's the nexus of business strategy and ADHD strategy. Sometimes your audience that you're trying to sell to is, they can't afford what you have, but there's someone else who can. So you need to adjust. And part of that is trying to sell what you're doing.
Yeah, excellent point. For sure. The market is going to dictate. And so if you're not
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to that, as much as we love our idea,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not what the consumers
Yeah.
want. So yeah, great
Mm-hmm.
point. So then let's talk about, as a business owner who is maybe struggling with ADHD challenges, what is a step that you can, take to get launched?
Yeah. So once you understand what your 80/20 is, we need to figure out. I always say to people, is it that everything is on fire and you don't know what to do first? Or is it that you know what to do first and you don't want to do it? There's usually one of those two things. So if we say, okay, I just feel like there's a million things to do. I've got a website, I've got this. Like, how do I figure out what to do first? Then we go through and we do a filter. So I actually have this. You can just DM me at Unconventional Organization. You can DM me Desiree, and I will send you the filter. And basically, what you need to do is you need to go through and go, okay, let's just brain dump everything in our head because with ADHD, we struggle with working memory, and this can be a problem. Don't look at your extra task list. Don't look at your email. Let's not get swamped. What is in your head? Write it down somewhere you're going to be able to come back to. And then from there, once you have all that down, it can take, I've watched people do this for 5 minutes. It's amazing what's in your head. Then we want to go in and say, okay, what is truly urgent here? And by truly urgent, if you don't do it tomorrow, there will be a significant negative external consequence. AKA, heaven forbid, the day took a sideways turn, you ended up in a waiting room somewhere. You would still be messaging people or trying to finish it. It would be something you'd have to at least say, hey, I can't come in, I can't do this thing. That's urgent. Most people, I've done this with hundreds and hundreds of ADHD people, do not have more than 5 on their list, truly. So once you have this urgent stuff, you go, okay, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do today. Nothing else has to be done. Let's look at the rest of this list and let's go, okay, what is the thing that is truly important for me in terms of the 80/20, in terms of what is going to drive my business forward? Is it that I have to email some people? Usually it's like, what is the mundane task that I've been putting off that's going to help me get my first client or going to help me, work through the messy middle of my business? And that is the piece that we want to go, okay, now we have some stuff that you have to do that you don't want to do because you have ADHD. So I get it. And then we talk about how to get that done when you don't want to do it.
Mm. Oh, good stuff. Really great. I love the idea of the brain dump, and whether it's in, just scribbled sentence form or just a few words that, are a trigger for something that's going on in your head. I love the
Mm-hmm.
idea of the brain dump being like a bubble and then offshoots of that bubble. Because sometimes, one
Yeah.
thought leads to another thought leads to another thought, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of like extensions of things, like this is part A and then B and C and D. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think this is such a great idea to help really get focused on what is
Mm-hmm.
important. And like you said, if this is urgent, it needs to get done right now. That's got to be at the top of the list. So
Yep.
great stuff.
Yeah. But it might not be urgent. It might just have come to you with the urgency of somebody else's thing, but it's not urgent to you. That happens all the time.
Yeah, another great reminder, and that kinda goes back to your 80/20 point, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's
Yeah,
urgent for somebody else, but is this urgent for you and for your business and the steps you need to take?
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
cool. So what, would you say are some of the biggest mind shifts that people with ADHD, entrepreneurs, can really begin to do to help them sustain the work that they're doing, their business?
Mm. The number one mindset shift I'd say is you're probably working really hard because a lot of times I'll talk to people and they'll say, I just need to try harder. I just need to work harder. I just need to push through. And the truth is, you are probably, if you're coming to me and you're talking to me, because I know people who aren't and they're not having these conversations, you're probably working very, very hard, probably at capacity for you. You just don't have the systems that are supporting you. You're working with systems that are built for somebody else's brain. one of the things people don't realize, they come to me and they're like, right, I'm at this point now, take me away, tell me I'm terrible and da 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 da. And that's not what we're doing at all. We're adjusting what you're doing so that it flows because it's built for your brain. It is not assuming time blindness doesn't exist, that your memory is 100%, that you're not going to have inconsistent energy spikes. Like, we're working within that framework and we're succeeding at that point.
Yeah, good stuff. And that phrase you use, like, I'll just push through. I'll just
Mm-hmm.
push through. I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
times I've said that to myself when I'm working on stuff, and it's like your day has been packed and you're tired, but you're thinking, "If I could just get this one more thing done,
Yep.
I'll be ahead tomorrow," or whatever story you're telling yourself.
Yep.
But you've pushed yourself beyond capacity, and then it's kind of like you just wanna give up after that because 'cause you're just
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah, eventually it starts to suck, you know? And the thing about being a business owner, and one of the reasons I love working with business owners is this is a voluntary position. No one is making you do this. If it is hard and horrible enough, you will burn out or you will self-sabotage. These are kind of the reasons, the things that tend to happen. You're probably not going to be able to maintain 100% capacity of something you don't like in a way you don't like it for years. And you're definitely not going to grow like that.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. The burnout and self-sabotage, I can absolutely see how if you're pushing yourself beyond your limits, it's gonna be
Hmm.
very easy to fall into either of those where,
Yeah,
you're gonna just not do the things you need to do because you're just too tired or you just don't feel like it because you're too tired. So, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, great stuff. So, can we talk about how your approach is different from like traditional productivity advice? And you've mentioned a couple times about like systems that are not designed for people who have ADHD. So what else do you
Yeah.
want to share on that?
Yeah, I think this is really important because I think sometimes people are like, oh, is this just what you do? Or, that kind of thing. Basically, my approach comes from I do a lot of work looking at primary research into ADHD. It's not all made equal, but, we go through, I have someone on my team who helps me with the research, and we go through and we look at what's coming out, what it says, AI, all of those things we're looking at. And then from there, we go through and this is what I've been doing for 5 years. This is how a lot of these systems have been developed. I'll usually test it on myself first. I'm not medicated. I have ADHD. I am very ADHD. So usually working on it, seeing if it's going to work. From there, I'll usually work on it with a one-on-one client. I have a few that I take a year, partially because I like to be able to build these systems. And so I'll personalize it for them, check in with them, make sure it's all working with them. And then from there, I'll teach it to my community. And that's when it comes to people. So when you are getting, something that I'm teaching, it's not just something that I've said. That would be nice, but there's plenty of things that I do that aren't going to work for you because it's not based on ADHD research. And so that is what makes what I do different from general productivity advice.
Yeah. Great point. And I love that you're continuing to do the research of all the things that are happening. Like you mentioned
Oh,
AI,
yeah.
and that's made a huge, huge change for a lot of people
Yeah.
really quickly. So that's important. And I think that's great that you're like this trial and error, not just for yourself, but a few people as well. So you can really
Hmm.
uh, deep dive into that and make kind of subtle changes that work for different people.
Hmm.
So I think before you introduce it to the general public, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's excellent. Would you say are some simple strategies that entrepreneurs can use to stay focused and follow through on the tasks at
Hmm.
hand?
Yeah. I love this question because the answer is always so surprising to people. The number one thing you can do when you are given a task that you don't want to do is actually give yourself a reward for starting the task, not for finishing so much. Because when you look at the research, you find we have a dopamine deprivation theory. Basically, we don't get that little dopamine bump at the beginning of a task that says, oh, this is going to feel so good at the end. You're going to get a reward. It's going to be amazing. it looks like we don't seem to get that or not as much. So we just look at a task, we go, this is boring, this is going to suck. And then at the end, you give yourself a reward and you're like, well, this is nice, but I don't know why it's happening. So it's not connecting. So what you want to do instead is you want to actually say, okay, I have to sit down and I have to do something, right? I have to do something I don't want to do. What can I give myself? It doesn't have to be, just endless chocolate, although chocolate is great. We want to go in and say, what are my five senses? Can I read an article, have a really nice beverage, maybe something I haven't tried before? Like, what can I do to just make this moment before I get started a good dopamine-filled moment? That'll probably save you hours of trying to get yourself to your desk right there. So that's probably the number one thing I would say right from the beginning.
What a great suggestion. Had not even thought of that. That little bit
Mm-hmm.
of something before you start the task. I mean,
Yeah.
always we're told reward yourself when you complete something or you've accomplished something, but this is like,
Mm-hmm.
what a great idea. Start with something
Mm-hmm.
that's, just a little treat, something a little
Mm-hmm.
different, and, then begin the task. And so this is like, my brain is kind of like, boom. I love it. Oh my gosh. Is there any other suggestions that maybe the person who's listening can try out?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's part of the whole step into focus routine. So the next thing that I tend to recommend is okay, there's three reasons. I'm going to go a bit nerdy here for a minute. There's three reasons we don't tend to do a task. It's too boring, it's too confusing, or it's emotionally vulnerable. Last time somebody yelled at us or something happened. When we talk about it's too boring, that's why we reward ourselves to start. It's too confusing, working memory problems, ADHD. Oh, I don't know which part comes next. Simplest thing you can do when you're about to start, after you've given yourself the reward, grab a little post-it note, something like this, and write on it, like a recipe, all of the different steps of that task, as if you're giving instructions to somebody else, because it's going to be you when you forget what you're doing. And then from there, usually that reduces a lot of the stress of I don't know what to do next. And then you can just open the application, tinker around in it a little bit, no pressure to get started. And that really helps you step into focus and flow.
Yeah. Another great suggestion for sure. I love the idea of explaining it to yourself as if you were explaining it to somebody else. And
Mm-hmm.
having that just real easy on a post-it note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
so you can reference that as you get going. And I know there's been times when I've looked at an email that has come in and it's like 3 paragraphs long, and I'm looking at it like, what
Mm-hmm.
do you want me to do here? And it's just like, I'm not doing this right
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love this as a tip to make it easier. It's like, just, okay, dig in for a
Mm-hmm.
second and see what it is, write those things
Yeah.
out, and then, make your way
Yeah.
through it.
And do that with some music on, do that with a background podcast on. Like, there's no rules that say that at this point you have to be like fully focused, complete silence. Something in the background, you just had a nice drink and read an article, and so you're still feeling good. And usually, what I say is like write down what you need to do in that period of time. Like, don't sit down and plan your whole day. But that's why it's a post-it note. When you run out of space on the post-it note, you're done.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, now what about, what you mentioned? It's something that's emotional. It's like drawing emotions out
Mm-hmm.
of you, and so that's
Yeah.
why you don't wanna tackle it.
Mm-hmm. So usually with that one, I recommend people break it apart. So once you've broken it down, we'll understand, okay, which is the emotionally salient bit, which has that like, oh, no, thank you feeling to it. For people who are like doing cold outreach, for example, with emails, things like that. So we'll say, okay, let's do the bit where you did everything else but send the email, because that's the emotional bit. And then we'll go ahead and we'll block another period of time as short as possible. And this one you might do in a coffee shop, you might do with somebody else, like whatever you need to feel more comfortable. And you'll go through and you'll just review all of those messages and you'll send, 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 send. So that's a totally different task.
Okay. Interesting. Never would have thought to split it
Mm-hmm.
into 2 parts like that.
Mm-hmm.
So are you in that second part, you're sort of addressing the emotional aspect of
Yeah,
whatever it is. And so
exactly.
do you have any thoughts on how we can, because what if it's, I don't know, whatever the emotion is, and it could be different for everybody depending on what the topic is.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have any suggestions on how we can work through whatever the emotions are.
Yeah, that one is interesting, like working through the emotions, because it will really depend on the person. Some people will just be able to sit with it, some people will need support. Usually, I will work with it on a case by case basis, depending on what the person is and obviously where they are with their mental health in general. But it's often got something to do with other people. So if what you're doing is an emotional component, sometimes it can be good to sanity check what you're doing with somebody else. Just get them to have a look at it at the beginning and say like, no, you're good. This is going to be great. Or like, oh, this makes sense. And if they don't think it does, then that works too. If you're in a position where you just have to kind of do it, so say you're applying for jobs or you're doing something like that, you're doing cold outreach, sometimes it can be good to do everything that's cognitively important. And then the next task, which is just review and send, you do it with as much rewards as possible. So you might do it like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go to a coffee shop, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to order something nice, and I'm going to just like read it and send, read it and send. I'm going to listen to my favorite piece of music in the background. So you're sort of moving between like connection and comfort depending on what you're doing. And obviously, I am not a therapist. I'm very clear about that. People tick a thing that say they know I'm not a therapist when we start. But there is also something around feeling the feelings and doing, emotional grounding techniques and all of those kinds of things as well.
Okay, yeah, great point though is that you can, like you said, sort of switch between the cognitive and the feeling of it,
Mhm.
and having that comfort of a really great beverage, a really great song or the type of music that
Mhm.
you enjoy listening to, and using those to help you, process through and
Yeah.
just hit send. So, yeah,
Yeah.
great tips. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sky.
Yeah. Well, it means that like if something is boring and confusing and you're emotionally like the chances that you're going to do it at that point, once you really break it down, you're like, no wonder I put this off for 6 months.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. Yes, good stuff. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, and how do I want to word this? How can somebody recognize if this is truly an ADHD or if it's just a mindset issue, like
Hmm.
why they don't want to do something or they're struggling in their
Hmm.
business or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get this question a lot because people want it to be a mindset issue because then they can just mindset their way out of it. Look, I love mindset. I think mindset's really important. I work on my own mindset. It's very, a big part of what I do personally. It's usually got to do with how persistent and pervasive is this across time. Like if you struggle with this and you struggled with this at home, you struggle with this at work, you struggle with this back in the day, you still struggle with this now, maybe it's a mindset issue, but maybe it's not. And my personal perspective on it in general is cool. Let's get some cognitive strategies going. Let's get some mindset strategies going. Let's make sure that problem is solved across all different areas. Why not?
Yeah. Well, and you know what? That's such a great thing to think about. Is this happening in lots of different areas of your life? Has it been happening for years? And kind of really digging into those things to determine if it is just strictly mindset. And it kind of goes back to the
Mhm.
like pushing yourself to just get through it. And it's like, if
Mhm.
that's not really where the issue is, it's not going to solve your problem. Right.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Important stuff to think about. Yeah. Okay, so what would you say is a tip that you teach your clients that helps them to kind of prioritize or stay on track?
Yeah, this is really great. So to keep you focused, I think initially it's the 80/20 and the 2-minute focus formula, which you talked about before. Like I have a daily standard. So when you start working with me, I give you 4 things that I want you to do every day. Like these are the 4 things where if you do nothing else and they're doable in one day, then you can make progress in your business. So I kind of like bring it down in that way. From there, usually if it's going well and it's about consistency, then we're starting to talk about with that, we've worked on you. Now we're talking about your business. So making sure you have eyes on your business because a lot of people are flying blind and they don't even realize it. And again, this is ADHD friendly stuff, oh, just make an SOP doc. Oh, just do that. You're like, okay, I'm never doing that. So we have ADHD friendly strategies to help you with that as well. help you with your team because you're going to want to build out a team, especially if you want to get to 6 and 7 figures. And then from there, it becomes a case of going, okay, well, let's make sure you have some really solid fun in your life so that you, when the business is no longer the sole source of energy for you, it's not giving you those dopamine spikes because it's actually going quite well. You don't start to self-sabotage. You don't start to go like, what if we added this thing that totally won't make revenue? Because we've all been there, shiny object syndrome. And so I actually have a section where I teach people about how to add something fun and also at their level. Because a lot of people are like, well, this is when I sit on the beach and I don't want to do that. So what do I do now? How to build in fun and energy flow into your week so that you have fun, you don't burn out. I mean, right before this call, I spoke to somebody. I was like, your prescription is you have to go find something fun to do this week. I want you to put it in your calendar, make it happen because they're just at that stage of business. And with ADHD, that's really important.
What a great point that your business is at a level where it's almost running on autopilot. And now you're feeling like, what do I do? This is no longer any fun for me. Um, we don't want to self-sabotage. We don't want to throw in things that are going to be like that monkey wrench into a working system.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of adding something fun just for fun into your calendar, I think that's a great idea. And really, honestly, I think we can all do that regardless.
Yeah. To be fair, like I take fun very seriously and I have research to back it up. So we talk about it a lot.
Yeah. How important play is as well, right? And not just for our businesses or whatever, but just for our mental health and well-being. We have just forgotten how important it is to have fun and play
Yeah.
and laugh. So great reminder. Okay, let me see, where do I want to go from here? Well, let me ask you if there's anything that you haven't shared to this point in our conversation that you really think the person listening needs to know. What would you like to share?
That's a good question. I think that usually at this point, it's just a case of like, is it going to work? Like, how do I know if it's going to work? I mean, I can't speak for everybody else. Usually, when people are working with me, it takes them about 2 weeks to start getting focused. And then we build it from there. We build the momentum. So, and this isn't, if you look at research into ADHD, when you have the strategies and you know how to use them, they happen very quickly. This is not like a wait for a year and see if you feel better and maybe you do, maybe you don't sort of thing. These are very practical systems and tips that you can put into place that help you immediately. And I get like, I mean, this is why this is my passion is I'm like, when people don't know that, I'm like, oh, this is you're making this so hard for yourself. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I think that's the key, right? Is that if you've got the systems, the kind of that little bit of a structure that works with you and the way that your mind operates, it could be very easy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it can be. It can, and I wouldn't say it's easy because I think people will think to themselves, oh, it's so easy, like I'm cheating. It's just, this is what it feels like when everything is working for you. You were just pushing against a system that didn't work for you this whole time and you had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point for sure. And not to say that it's easy, like easy peasy, no problem, whatever. But yes, you worded it in a really great way, is that you were pushing against systems and trying to put yourself into like that square peg instead of the round when, it's the wrong fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay. So I know you have your own podcast, as I've listened to it myself and I really enjoy it.
Oh,
Yes.
that's so cool.
So the ADHD Skills Lab is the name of your show. And so I'd love for you to tell the listeners more about it. What are you talking about on the show? What would they find if they were to listen?
Yeah, no, I love it. So we've been around for a little while. Now we're getting close to 100 episodes, but we really focus on exactly what it says on the tin: ADHD skills, and then the lab part kind of hints at the research backing. So we talk about the latest research. This is still really important to us, and it's fun. Who doesn't want to know about how AI is going to start diagnosing people with ADHD in their voice and all kinds of things like that? But we're also focusing on more and more now on entrepreneurship. So I have a roster, man. I have done some really amazing podcasts in the last couple of weeks of amazing business owners who are all millionaires, pretty much at this point, and just amazing people with amazing strategies to teach. And so what I do is I will have them on, I will interview them, I will, either they have ADHD and we'll talk about that, or they suspect they have ADHD. That's usually the two kinds of people who come on my podcast. And we'll make sure that we have very, very practical tips. And it's just an amazing place because there's not a lot of places you can go if you're like, oh, I want to run a business, but all the strategy is that's being taught to me feels very dry, and it's not something that I can really like attach to, and it just doesn't feel natural for me. This is a space where you can go and you'll get that. You'll get something that works for you that you can implement, and it's all there. It's all in the podcast.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'll detail that in the show notes for sure. I would love for the listeners to check it out. And so I love to have my guests also share if there's books or podcasts that they think the listeners should check out. And I know
Mm-hmm.
we chatted briefly before we began recording. You love the research. So I know
Yeah.
it's maybe not something for everyone, but
Yeah.
there are other podcasts or perhaps YouTube channels that you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah. Well, I will say if you want the best research article that I've ever read, Tripp and Wickens from 2008, the neurobiology of ADHD. We can put it in the show notes. If you want to get into neuroscience, that's the paper that I think is really fun. And then in terms of the podcast, hacking your ADHD is really cool. Like I've connected with them. We've worked with them before. He's the OG. If you have ADHD, you probably already heard his podcast, but just very practical, very personal. He always has a little moment of dad at the end, which I think is so fun. And yeah, you can listen to that. I love that podcast.
Okay, great recommendation for sure. And I love the research paper, and thank you for sharing that. I will detail that as
Mm-hmm.
well. I'm curious about it because I love this idea of, neuroplasticity. And so
Mm-hmm.
how this, kind of comes together. And so
Yeah.
neuroscience and ADHD and, all of that. So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff.
Yeah. And if you just want to listen to us talk about it, then you can just listen to the podcast because we break it down.
There you go. If you're not into the dry science part of it, listen to ADHD Skills Lab, and then you can hear all about it.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. Oh my gosh, Skye, this has been so good. Is there any last words that you want to share with the listeners?
I think mostly just, yeah, you're probably doing a good job and you just need different systems. So go find some different systems, do an even better job, and have a great life. That's what I want for everybody.
Yeah, that's it, right? It's find the things that work with you in the way that you work
Mm-hmm.
to help you be successful.
Exactly.
Yeah, bravo. Okay. Skye, would you share with the listeners how they can find you? Your website? Are you on social media? We've shared your podcast and I will detail that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other way that the listeners can find you and ask you questions and or work with you?
Yes. So you can message me, like I mentioned, at Unconventional Organization on Instagram. That's where you'll find me hanging out. And you can message me, Desiree, and I will send you the 2-minute focus formula so that you have that, so you don't have to feel overwhelmed. You can also find my website is unconventionalorganization.com, and you can go there for information on the podcast. I have articles, and if you want to apply for my program, then definitely do that. We work with entrepreneurs and executives who want to grow focused, balanced growth.
Mm, perfect. And I will detail all of that in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing that fantastic resource with the listeners and myself. I do appreciate it. Thank you again for coming on the show and sharing this information with us. Great tips and suggestions that we can begin implementing into our life right away.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk more soon. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.